Okay, so we're going to continue on with this cycle and, continue to deal with this concept of pleasure and how it impacts your life. You know, I think this topic is very important because of some of the things that are going on in the world today, with all the, sickness that is going on and, all of the expressions of entertainment and things of that nature. We're going through this revolution now where we're transitioning into a new state of doing things, a new state of interacting with people that I think we all should be aware of. And this is heavily founded upon this principle of pleasure and the importance of pleasure and how we should use pleasure to impact our lives. Man and woman are born into a reservoir of vitality and vigor that expresses itself through pleasure. For instance, a child is born in this world crying out for his or her mama's milk. We would say in that regards that the desire for mom's milk is a virtuous pleasure because mom's milk is designed to maintain and increase the vitality of the child. Mom's milk is built with fatty acids and lipids that you can't get anyplace else. That is very good for building brain functioning and activity within that child. So when that child cries out for mom's milk, in actuality, they're expressing a virtuous pleasure that is directly related to their vitality needs. That child will stay into virtue until mom changes it to vice. Mom changes it to Similac. And now the child is consuming Similac, and we know based on studies that, that doesn't have the fatty acids necessary to build proper brain functioning. And so a lot of children that are reared on Similac start out with a lot of their mental capacities diminished. But that's not the point of our conversation today. The point of our conversation is for us to understand that vitality communicates through pleasure. That's how it communicates. It's sustained through pleasure. Vitality is a state of being, a state of power that is impacted by pleasure. We can go on and further say that pleasure is a direct link to vitality and vigor. And vitality and vigor is a direct link to your spiritual power. Your spiritual power, that entity that's a part of your makeup, that is a part of your being, that's responsible for 80% of your life success. It goes beyond your comprehension. It is working upon your behalf even when you are asleep. Even when you are asleep, it is talking to somebody in Japan and motivating them to click on your YouTube video. Your vitality is the key to unlocking this power reservoir, to unlocking this potential that is within you. But your vitality is impacted by pleasure. Now, I want to give you guys a quick history and how other nations view pleasure, in particular ancient Egypt and ancient China. In ancient China, the virtues of the Chinese society were associated with this concept of jade stone. And if you know anything about jade, it's a very soft material that allows people to script on it. So a lot of the ideas that were given to the Chinese people were recorded on jade stone. So therefore, jade stone became the symbolism of virtue in the ancient Chinese civilization. Okay, so just bear with me. Now, the color of jade is green. In ancient Egypt, the symbol of virtuous pleasure was the papyrus stalk, because it was papyrus that a lot of writings that was used for writing, and is where you recorded the ideas that people that reported to other people. So in other words, like you reading your newspaper, right? You get your newspaper and you see somebody who owns that newspaper is communicating ideas to you. Well, in ancient Egypt, those ideas were communicated through papyrus. So the symbol of watch, the expression of virtuous pleasure, was a papyrus stock. Now, those two concepts are very important because, one, it shows the importance of how the ideas of pleasure are communicated and the importance and the impact upon society. In China, in order for something to be recorded and passed on to the people, it had to be validated by a high priest to ensure the virtues of the life force were maintained through the ideas promoted within the community. In ancient Egypt, before something was recorded upon papyrus and presented to the people, it too had to be validated by a high priest to ensure that the ideas of pleasure that were communicated to the people was in alignment to the life force and therefore maintained and increased the vitality of the people within those nations. So the point I want you to understand is this: the concept of virtue was so important in ancient Egypt and ancient China that they were controlled and managed. That's why you have these symbolisms of papyrus and jade associated with virtue, because it's talking about how we communicate these ideas. What's being communicated to you as a sense of pleasure? What's being driven to you as a sense of pleasure? Because you're born in virtue. You have to be changed into vice. You have to be, influenced into vice through somebody feeding you these ideas. Now, we know in ancient China, they took vitality and vigor very seriously. So, you see these movies and stories about being so in such great vitality and vigor that they were actually able to, fly or dramatize great vigor and vitality as being able to fly, being able to use their mind. So if you watch some of the old school Kung Fu movies, you see them promoting the ideas of virtue and its impact upon vitality and vigor. And the same is true in ancient Egypt. The Greek historian Herodotus said that the ancient Egyptians were the most healthiest people that he had ever met. So I want you to just give you kind of an understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about the concept of virtuous pleasure, the ideas of pleasure that impact your virility. And when your vitality and virility is impacted, you can't tap in, you can't plug into that spiritual power that you have that goes beyond your comprehension, that does stuff on your behalf. You can't tap into that and direct that if your vitality is low. But if you're being susceptible to these negative ideas that are being communicated to you, then yes, you're going to fall victim to those things. According to the Ma'asah, according to the Book of Knowing, it says that virtuous self-gratification increases your vitality and then increases your ambition, allowing you to tap into and maximize the potential of your natal ka. Now, let me say that again. Virtuous self-gratification increases or maintains your vitality, increases your ambition, and allows you to tap into the potential of your natal ka. That's what our ancestors have given to us in this day and age that we're in right now. We're currently in this age of what we call pestilence, where, there are a lot of sickness, a lot of disease that's going around, and there seems to be this desire to promote ideas of vice. People that understand the concept of virtue and vice know very well what vice does. It diminishes your vitality, and then from that point on, you become enslaved to the medical system, enslaved through the judicial system, enslaved through the criminal justice system. You have to understand and take control of your own virtues, because right now the people that's in charge of us are either ignorant, in other words, they don't understand the concept of vice or virtue, or they are manipulating a system for a specific goal. If you are an adult and you're listening to me right now, you have to take control over your own concepts and ideas of pleasure. Even when the sage kings back in the old dynasty, the old kingdom of ancient Egypt, and the sage kings and the sages of China, they were still doing it upon your behalf. But at that particular point, since we had righteousness in the place of leadership, it was okay to be dependent in that way. But right now, the leadership that is in the world today, they're not concerned about your overall well-being. They're about promoting an agenda. So if you're an adult and you're listening to me right now, you have to take control over the ideas that are promoted to you, that are given to you to define your sense of pleasure. And you have to try your best to stay in the lane of virtue. You see, currently right now, they're teaching you to indulge in drugs and calling it freedom of choice, to indulge in licentious sexual activity and call it freedom, sexual freedom. Teaching you to indulge in gluttonous eating and call it being body positive. You see, these are ideas that have been being promoted to you that is diminishing your vitality and not allowing you to maximize your potential. Pleasure is something that is directed. You can direct it just like you direct any idea. You can have pleasure for this today and not have pleasure for this tomorrow. You can direct your pleasure from hog maws and chitlins and all that garbage and direct it to kale greens. You can direct your pleasure to kale greens to a point where your body starts to desire kale greens like you used to desire fried chicken. You have control over these things to promote your vitality and understand what that vitality is doing to unlock your inner power. But you have to be in control of these things now. We're moving into a world where nobody's going to do it for you. If you think that TV is going to teach you virtuous pleasure to maintain your vitality, you're incorrect. If you think that the school system is going to teach your child how to stay in states of vitality, you're incorrect. You have to do this yourself. You have to be concerned about the ideas that you promote to others, the virtuous ideas that you promote to others, and the ideas that you allow to be promoted to you. You have to understand that right now society is, quote unquote, feeding you Similac in virtue in many different ways. And you have to understand that even though these things are being forced upon you, you think because you have a pleasure in these things that you have to go with that pleasure. No, you don't. You can redirect your pleasure to something that increases your vitality, that allows you to tap into your infinite potential. You have to control what's being written on your papyrus. You have to control what's being carved on your jade stone. You have to be in control of that stuff, and the way you do it as a divine being, as an expression of the source, as the source manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself. You have to directly write your own script on your papyrus stock or on your jade stone to ensure that you manage and maintain your vitality and vigor to reach your maximum potential and that of your children and those that are dependent upon you. Let's meditate.